Hello and welcome to the James Granström podcast, Super Soul Model series, where I help people tune and tap into their natural state of well-being. Today's guest is none other than the superstar Gill TINEY of Collaboration Global. Welcome to the show, Gill. Thank you so much for coming on, my love. How are you today?
I'm good, but I'm going to just change as one word in that wonderful introduction. It's Gill TINEY.
Thank you. I love to be corrected because if you get it wrong,
you are not the first person.
Gill TINEY. Is that an Irish name, is it?
No, it's Cornish. It originates from the tin miners down in Cornwall. So yeah, we used to be called tinnies back then, but that was two N's, and now we're tiny, TINEY. So I say it's like being short, you know. I spent my whole life being, well, people tried to bully me over my name, and I wouldn't have it. So
that's what you're straight down the line, Gill. I love that about you. If you're new to the podcast, please remember to like, subscribe, and share it with people you think are going to benefit from this message of well-being. If you don't know about Gill, Gill is a wonderful creator. She has created and co-created a fantastic membership site called Collaboration Global. She runs her own podcast, Being Human Hidden Depths. She helps assist on an online publication called The Quest. So I would just like to welcome with a big round of applause, Gill, to the show. Thank you, Gill. And tell us a little bit about you, my love. How did you get to this position of creating so much, a wealth of information, sharing it with so many people? And today we're going to really talk about collaboration and what that means to you. But we need to know a little bit about you before you started creating all this fantastic stuff around you. So tell us a little bit about your backstory.
My backstory. Well, when I was a kid, my dad was a docker, and my mum was a carer. And I used to say at the age of about 6 or 7, when I grow up, I'm going to be a docker. And my mum laughed at me and was like, "Why are you laughing?" She said, "Well, women can't be dockers." I said, "Well, I'll be the first one then." So I think I've always had this kind of striving for being different and getting out there and getting stuff done. Whiz forward, I ended up at the age of 16 getting a job. You had to get a job back then, had to be a job, you know. Didn't consider university, although I did go eventually, but it's not the same standing at the student bar when you're like 39. It's not as much fun as when I've been 18. So yeah, I got a job and realized I hated it. I don't like being told what to do. I don't like being at a certain place at a certain time. I was restricted, and that was kind of a little learning curve along the way that I'm going to have to be my own boss. That's the only way to do it. So my husband and I started our first business in 1988. And as time went on, I tried other things in between. He carried on with the business like he does. I did teaching. I had 5 years out with my kids when they were little because I wanted to be there for them all the time. But while I had my 5 years out, I used to run the mother and toddler group. I started a ballet school. I took various courses. I worked at the local school as a teaching assistant. And so how I had time to bring up my children, I don't really know. But,
sounds like at an early age, you were a real go-getter, you know, a real go-getter.
You know what? I think a lot of women are, and I don't want to sound sexist here, but it is kind of sexist that most women I know that have a sort of determination in life, they are very good at, look, I've rolled my sleeves up. This is what it's about. You roll your sleeves up and you get stuff done. I'm not great at navel gazing. You know, it's like, let's talk about this more. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. Well, how about some doing as well? Let's do and talk.
Real action. What I really want to bring across today is that you've got an incredible mindset on you. And, you know, one of the things that is important to me, and particularly this podcast, is you've got a really fantastic mindset on you. And that sort of takes us and shows us your path of like looking after your kids, trying loads of different jobs until recognizing that you need to be your own boss. And that takes courage, that takes bravery, but at the same time, it's also, you've got to have some mindset on you, you know, and where does that come from for you, Gill? Is that just something that you've cultivated, or is it something that you feel that's passed down in your family, or where did you pick it up? Because you've got a really fantastic ability to focus. And, you know, I'm hoping that the audience can learn a thing or two from you, and maybe I can learn a thing or two from you with your ability to, and how you focus and how you manage to sometimes block out some of those things so you can just focus on what's in front of you, that task, because Collaboration Global is no small thing. And, you know, that's all thanks to you. And of course, you've got so many other things going on as well. So how do you manage that? What's your secret to focus here?
Oh, wow. probably naivety to a certain extent. And I think I was blessed by my dad, who kind of instilled in us without realizing it, that how to be wealthy. And not wealthy from the money side of things, but wealthy from the emotional, aren't we lucky, aren't we blessed perspective. So although as a kid, I look back now and I can see how we were really poor, you know, we would have meat on a Sunday, but you wouldn't have meat probably the rest of the week because we were making do until Friday when it was fish day. And then, you know, we start the week again. So I realized that as a docker, quite often he was out of work and you didn't know, there was no sort of, they were often on strike. It was a very horrible time for my parents. And I grew up in a house that had no hot water, outside toilet, no bathroom, obviously no central heating. So we were struggling. And this is not because I'm 100 years old. This is my peers would have central heating, would be going to Spain for their holidays. We just didn't have very much because of the lifestyle that we had. But I never felt that we went without. So my dad's mindset was one of wealth. How lucky we are. Can we do this, Dad? Yeah, we'll see how we go. Let's see how we can do it. We'll find a way. And it was this kind of possibility that was always there, you know, and we'd go places and I'd say, what's around the corner? He'd be like, come on, let's go find out. You know, what's down those steps? What's up those steps? What's over there? And it's natural curiosity of a child that was nurtured in me and never put down.
That is incredible, because most people's families or most people you hear of these days don't have that kind of guardian or parent that's maybe not having the most financial success, but that is looking at that life from those kind of that perspective. And that's what I'm wanting to teach, to obviously help that and encourage that perspective in people, because we live in a modern world and society where there is so much, but yet we only see what's missing. We don't see what's there. And it seems like your dad was, you know, a pioneer to a certain extent in being able to see the glass full, you know.
Totally. Yeah.
Even though the external conditions may not have been. And you know, there's so many people and stories, the people we revere, like Tony Robbins, you know, his parents had nothing and he managed to find a way. And it was just, I'm always fascinated by people whose start in life doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, a feathered nest, but managed to find some gold in the journey, managed to find the nuggets of wisdom that help them. And that just exactly sounds like your dad, who's passed that on to you.
Yeah, and I think as well, I developed this Pollyanna attitude. If you've never seen Pollyanna, it's a brilliant story, but check it out on Disney. I think there's a film you can go and watch, but it's about this girl that saw the goodness in everything. And that was kind of my stance as well. And people used to say to me when I worked for local government, like, oh, for goodness sake, you're such a Pollyanna, as though it was a bad thing. And I'm like, but surely being positive and looking for the good in people is a nice thing. And it was kind of like, why would you, oh, Jill, for goodness sake, you can't think like that. Why not? And I've kind of kept that. And then when I met somebody else along the way, I became a business coach and I was trying out different things. And I wrote my first book and I was very excited about it. And this guy came along and he was the first person that didn't kind of take the mickey out of me being so optimistic with, you know, what if the world was a better place? And I think over the years where I've been a teacher for primary school children and I've done various other things, that's always run all the way through. It's like, what if, you know, and the wonder of a child I've kind of kept hold of, because it's like, well, why can't it be like that? Just because somebody else tells me it can't be, it's like, but that doesn't make it right. And I've always seen that we should be kind to each other. So I don't know if you were ever at school, James, where you're in a classroom where somebody thought it was funny to pull the chair away from somebody and somebody goes to sit down, they fall down, hurt themselves, and everyone laughs. And I used to say, that's not nice. Why would you do that? That's really mean. Don't be horrible to each other. And that was my whole demarcation of like, come on, together we can do more, we can find out more, we can have more fun together, just be nice to each other. Why has it always got to be, you know, the American way of being successful is usually do it on your own, sod everybody else and get on. It's the American dream, isn't it, supposedly? And I'm like, that doesn't feel right. It feels right to everyone be successful together, to help each other. If I help you to be successful and you help me to be successful, then we're going to enjoy it and have much more fun than if you go, no, I'm all right, Jill, I'm good. I've got a whole group of people over here that I'm working with and I'm not going to share my clients with you because you might steal one of them or you might steal some of my IP. And I'll be like, I wouldn't dream of doing that. So why don't we get together people that are kind enough to say, how can I help, before they go, so what's in this for me? And
Yeah,
it's,
I guess I know exactly what you're saying, and I'm with you. I'm quite highly empathetic, so like watching those kids do that is
yeah,
never sits right with me, which is why I don't really watch any action movies anymore. You know, I used to love all that stuff, but if it's hurting another human being, I'm a bit like, nah, it's not for me. Um, but that's consciousness, and that's a level of awareness, and that's also a level of heart where you're recognizing that we need to help one another rather than, you know, be in this dog eat dog world. You know, I think that dog eat dog world is an old paradigm of social conditioning that I think is outdated. But to some people, they live in that atmosphere. But
yeah,
the atmosphere that you're talking about is what I call a new earth, a new level of consciousness, a new level of living. It's basically living in your heart rather than in your head, isn't it? So, and I think that that's why you're such a wonderful person to connect with today on this episode of the podcast, because you bring so much heart into your work, you bring so much heart into the world, and also trying to create these win-win scenarios for everybody, and that's why it's been such a joy with you to connect today, and I know we've got a few things going forward, so we'll look forward to talking a little bit about that at the end of the show. But I'm just quite interested about, you know, you talked about your dad, you talked about the aspect of him, like the curiosity, but how did that take you into like the business aspect of where you're at now? Because, you know, he allowed you to see things from an optimistic and curious perspective, which I think is so important. And if you're not curious, you're kind of cutting yourself off to opportunity and infinite possibilities.
yeah.
So that curiosity has kept you going. But what about the business aspect? Where did that start to, you know, kick in? Because you've tried a few different jobs till you found your calling now. You know, there's been a bit,
Yeah.
of course, you've been a mum, you're an author, you know, you've got so many things going on. But what's taken you to where you are now? Because there's been a bit of a journey, no doubt. So
Yes, I mean, well, you talk about being an empath. I mean, when I was a teacher, I found it really difficult because I worked in an area where the children were really, really, you know, from a poor area, and they struggled. And I did a lesson once on PSHE, personal social health education, and it was on the curriculum, it said drugs. So I'm like, well, they're 8 years old, so where am I hitting this? So we're talking
yeah,
Calpol, paracetamol. They're like, no, do the whole thing, you know, cocaine, heroin. I'm like, really? By the end of that lesson, I knew where to score. I knew who could get me the drugs. They knew more about drugs than I could ever teach them. It was horrific. And when you're teaching, they don't let you take the kids home. And I just wanted to do that all the time. It's like, let me look after you, let me protect you. And I got very down with it. And after one particular term, when it was very, very stressful, I said, well, I'm going to take a break. I'm just going to take a break for a month, and then I'll go back to it because they need me. And I felt very drained by it, but at the same time, I felt needed and I wanted to help. But while I was having my term off trying to recuperate, I mean, I won't say I had a breakdown, but it was very traumatic at the time when I was witnessing some of the things that were going on. And while I was having my time off, different people came to me with, well, if you're off for a little while, do you want to come and work for me? Oh, there's another job. And I had about 3 jobs in 24 hours. I'm like, wow, there's another world out there I'd forgotten about. And then my husband said, well, if you're going to go and work for them, why don't you come and work for me instead? Because he still had the business going. And I said, I won't
what's
work.
the business? What was your husband's business?
It's stationery. It's
Yeah.
not the most exciting business in the world, but he sells to schools, basically, across the UK. And I said, well, I won't work for you, but I might work with you. So we worked out how we could do that without killing each other. And I started in the business. So I was kind of marketing, he was operations, that kind of thing. And I decided that if we're going to be a big global business, because I had these big visions of what we could do, I would need a business coach. So this business coach, after a little while, said to me, Jill, how many people have you helped in the last week around business? I'm like, oh, I don't know. He said, well, at least 6 people have come to me and told me how much you've helped them. He said, why don't you go and get paid for it? I'm like, oh, yeah. And that was my next journey. So then I went down that route. So if you look through everything that I've done, all I'm doing is helping people the whole time, because it feels right. And I was labeled in my head, nurturer, supporter, second fiddle, if you will. I'm in the background, somebody else is up on stage, and I'm just doing the work, getting stuff done. And it wasn't until I started my business from the previous one, not Collaboration Global, it was called B Collaboration, that I was with somebody else who was kind of like the leader of the pack, and I was a supporter. But lots of people kept coming to me going, no, you should be the one. You should be the step up. It's time for you to step up. So when it transpired that he didn't want to carry on going down the same route as me, which was fine. I mean, a lot of people would look at that and go, oh, you worked so hard on it. It was such a big thing, and you had to walk away. And I'm like, well, it taught me an awful lot. I got so much from it.
There's a real lesson in there for the listeners here, actually, with that story of yours, is that life doesn't, you know, you're in the middle of teaching, you might be in the middle of your job right now, and somehow it halts. And you're thinking that you're not doing your dream job, you might be lost, and something happens, like you just get put out of action with some sort of illness or whatever, or you just feel uncomfortable and you need to take a break, just like Gill was mentioning. But it doesn't mean that you are not being guided in the right direction. And that's the thing that's really interesting here, that a lot of people may feel like they're doing the wrong thing, but actually everything that you're doing is actually leading up to what is going to bring you that satisfaction. So there may be certain things you need to learn, which is, I prefer to do this than this. I recognize that my skills are here than here. As Gill was saying, she noticed that she was a nurturer, a supporter. You know, maybe you're the star, but you can't be the star unless you have the right team around you. These are certain things, you know, there's so much that has to go on behind, you know, even me starting the podcast, I had to learn all the editing skills. I had to learn all the bits about how to put it together. And, you know, all of these things stretch you and make you grow. And at the beginning, it's free. You have to do it all for free. You have to pay for it through your own pocket. But there's lessons, and the lessons create growth, and the growth creates confidence. And, you know, when you recognize that maybe that teaching job wasn't right for you, and then you get offered a job by, dare I say it, your husband at home, and you're turning it into a way that's going to be a win-win for both, for him and for you and for the business and for the clients, you're now getting to activate, you know, your skill set, which is helping people. But there's a little bit more, isn't there, Gill? So carry on.
Well, exactly. It is, you look back and you can join the dots, but I think now I'm at that stage where it isn't just about satisfaction, as you say. We can all go and go, well, I enjoy doing that bit, so I'm going to do that bit. But there are always going to be things that you don't necessarily do enjoy. Like, you probably, if you could have given that editing to somebody from day one, you'd go, please, because I don't have to
It was so hard at the beginning. I was like, it was such a learning curve. But now it takes a while, but I edit it so that it makes sense, you know, so that it creates this sense of fluidity, which is what I'm all about. I'm wanting the message to be fluid and clear. But there's obviously certain things that you want to just like go, oh, I've got to hand it over. And that's basically what I'm beginning to do. I'm in the beginning process to hand stuff over so that I can continue, which is with my work, which is to share the message of well-being.
Exactly. And ultimately you do all the stuff that is the grot work, if you want an expression for it, because you already know deep down that I've got this other important job to do. And this other little stuff that's a bit annoying, but I'm going to do it, is going to get me to the stuff that I need to do. It's not I enjoy it necessarily, because mostly you do enjoy it, but it's like, I have to, I don't have a choice. I've got to do this, because you look back and you see all the things that have been playing out in your life that have been leading you to this place. And for me, it was November 2019 that I came to the realization, and I had to go, funny enough, to make the decision, my choice, I had to go to the ocean. So people were on at me going, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Are you going to go with the old business, or are you going to start a new one? And I kind of, my head was saying one thing, but I'm like, I need to clarify this. So I went to the ocean. I said, look, I'm going to the ocean, guys. I'll tell you tomorrow. And that was literally, and I stood there on the beach, in the sea, in November, and just looked out to sea and waited.
Waited for an answer.
Yeah, and it came. And it came. And the answer was more or less, what are you waiting for? Get on with it. Do it. You know you have to do this, because this was my moment. What was it that you being told to do? What did you feel that was coming up? What did you know that you weren't acknowledging? Because this is important for people, because
there's always this burning desire in all of us as human beings. I personally really believe this. There is a burning desire that needs to be fulfilled. There's something that needs to be tapped into. Otherwise, we're just coasting. I have to say that I've been a real model for being a coaster for so long, and then just realizing, and I've said this story before, so I'll say it again, until one day I was coasting and not acknowledging that I had to run a podcast. I had the idea 11 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And coast, carry on coasting, break up in a relationship, and I'm like, oh no. And then, you know, then I get the idea for the podcast, what the name could be, right?
Yeah.
Super Soul Model, the James Granström podcast, Super Soul Model. And the reason for it being Super Soul Model is because I had been modeling, I've been a male model, but I wanted to bring the essence of soul to life. I wanted to be I stand for well-being. So I want people to be the model of well-being. So that requires mind, that requires body, taking care of your body, what you're putting in your body, how you're taking care of it. And of course, nurturing your soul like you do when you're by the beach.
Yeah.
Absorbing in the essence of like clarity and space. And when I knocked my head on the pool swimming right in the middle of my third eye, I was like, right, that's it. I'm doing it now. I'm doing it. If I need anything else, there's a bang on the head and life's just gone, James, have a knock on the head. And then maybe that will wake you up to go and do it now, because you're now it's time. And I'm not waiting for you anymore, is basically what life was saying to me. Yes. And I was like, oh God, I've got to do this. And I had no idea how to do it. But I'm gonna just begin.
Exactly.
And so you got that moment on the beach, and I'm hoping that people get this, because these stories are great, because you've got to use it to for your own fuel. You know, how it comes about is in your own way, and the universe will do it so it's perfect for you. But you know, like Gill was standing on the beach and she received an answer. I got a knock on the head. I hope you don't get a knock on the head, but you know, if you do, it's a wake up. Hurry up. Do it.
Well, it's better than a wet fish around the face, but sometimes people around you are trying to tell you to go in one way and it doesn't feel right. And you really do have to connect to your inner self to hear that voice. And whether you hear a voice like I did very clearly, like, what are you waiting for? Get on with it. It's like, oh, I was being told off. I really felt that, that awkward. Okay, all right then. I had to get on with it because I'd been dilly-dallying like you for like 2 or 3 years before that. And people have been saying to me, look, what you're doing, you should have an OBE. What you're doing is amazing. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm a supporter. I'm a nurturer. I help other people to be amazing. It's like, well, why can't you step up and be the vision that you have for yourself for other people, and then help them to be amazing as well? But you're the face of it. You are the voice of it. You are the person that holds the vision for what's possible for a community of people to come together and support each other. Because you go to any community online, and a lot of communities face to face, you know, even if you look at Rotary Club or Women's Institute or Towns Women's Guild or any kind of ongoing long-term community, they're still living in a society where there's fear, scarcity and competition, because that's what we're taught throughout our life. So it was up to me to create a society, a community that's founded on love, connection and abundance. And I've always had an abundance mindset, going back to my dad, because he taught me. He didn't say these words, but I look back and I thought, I always felt I was wealthy. I always felt I deserved, I was going to have a beautiful house in a beautiful part of the world, lovely cars to drive, lovely holidays. I've done that. I don't need that. But I saw it. And if I see it in my mind's eye, that's what's going to happen. So knowing that I had all of this was like, come on, Gill, now's the time. You should have done it 10, 20 years ago. What are you waiting for? Get off your behind and do it.
So the message is, what are you waiting for?
Yeah.
And don't do what I did, which is wait 11 years and coast, because that just creates resistance and it creates upset. But out of it, there's still something to be learned. So if you even did what I did, which was have an idea and do nothing about it, don't beat yourself up, because there's still learning things that happen as a result. Yeah. It's still going to work out. It still is working out. You're still learning and growing through every experience. And it will all make sense only when you look back, but maybe not in the present.
Yeah, but also at the same time, both of us got to a point when we realized that we couldn't procrastinate any longer. And that goes for any part of your life. You know, if your digestive system isn't great, you've got to look at what you're eating. If your mental health isn't great, you've got to look at, you know, who are the people around you, who's supporting you, all the things that are testing you in your mental health. If your physical health is not great, you know, there comes a point where you have to choose powerfully in order to step across that line and go, I'm not having that life anymore. I'm not going to do what I was going to do, or I'm going to be brave enough to step up to a different level that I don't know what that feels like, but I'm going to do it because I feel like there's a need. There is a calling in me that is my purpose. And I don't want to be 85 years of age on my deathbed going, yeah, I didn't get around to that.
Yeah,
That's
I think
just
that
unbearable.
I'm totally with you. I think one of my, I don't want to look back on my deathbed and go, I didn't go for it. I don't want to look back on my deathbed and go, I didn't give it everything I had.
Yeah.
You know, I want to look back and go, what an amazing life. What
Yeah.
how many people have I uplifted along the way? How much joy have I brought to myself? How much peace was I living within each moment,
Mm.
even when there were challenge, even when there was challenge? You know, how much abundance am I actually living in? Have I shared that mindset with the people I care about? And have I contributed to people's lives in meaningful ways every single day? You know, there's so many things, and will my message continue long after I'm gone? These are the types of things that I think about. I want to leave a legacy of love, a legacy of financial abundance, a legacy of thought, a legacy of beautiful music, a legacy of creativity. Just so many different legacies that contribute to the beingness that I had when I'm on my deathbed. I know it seems a bit like morbid to think about, but I want to fast forward because it makes me want to take action today.
Exactly. And what I'm saying is that just because you choose to step up and you choose to do these things that you've been dreaming of, or you feel you're being called to, doesn't mean to say it's always going to be easy.
No.
Doesn't mean to say it's always going to flow. I mean, on my dark down days, I just go, all right, Jill, you don't have to do this anymore. You're going to walk away. That's fine. Don't have to do it anymore. I'm like, whoa, there's nothing else I want to do. There's nothing else I feel capable of doing. There's nothing else that would give me the joy that this is giving me. When even on a down day, I can find joy from someone in the community, or someone that I've helped, or someone that's doing something amazing because of something I might have triggered in them. I couldn't dream of not doing it at all. And it's just crazy. So it's like, well, why are you complaining, girl? Get on with it then. And all of a sudden the black mood lifts and you can move forward. But there will be downtimes, there will be struggles, like doing your editing. I bet you said a few choice words when it wasn't going.
I remember coming down at the beginning when I first started. I was like, why am I doing this? This is ridiculous. And then I was questioning myself, because you're like, am I doing the right thing? Am I actually doing the right thing? Even, you know, like I come up with a new episode every week and I love it. I've got so much content. I must have infinity books within me to talk about certain subjects. And, you know, one of the gifts I have is being able to communicate, and I love communicating, but I also love listening to other people as well. That's one of my joys, is being able to, you know, understand human beings, understand one another. That gives me great joy, to discover other people. And when we first met, I was like, oh, wow, Jill, what an interesting human being.
It's lovely as well, isn't it, when you spot their genius and they might not have spotted it themselves.
Yeah, I mean, but it's great because, remember, everything's a reflection. And if, like you mentioned the word trigger, what if something that you spot in another triggers something within them to awaken or activate that? And, you know, I think stories are a wonderful way to activate and trigger these things within each other.
Let me tell you a little story then, talking about a trigger. So we had a member at one of our groups, this was a couple of years ago, and he let slip at the meeting. Now, bearing in mind, this community has a culture of love, connection, and abundance, connection to themselves as well as to other people. And he let slip that he hadn't spoken to his dad for 7 years. And we all kind of went, ooh, okay. Nobody really said anything at the time, but at the end of the meeting, one or two people went up and went, why don't you pick the phone up to your dad? He said, no, I'm good, it's fine. Really? Did you have a good relationship before the argument? And, well, yeah, we did, and I do kind of miss him a little bit, but no, it's good, it's fine. So bit by bit, the breadcrumbs were kind of laid for him to follow, and we gave him some coaching, and he went on a little course, and eventually he went, yeah, I'm going to ring him up. So he rang up his dad, haven't spoken to him for 7 years. His children didn't even know they had a granddad. And he healed the rift. Right, he became the grown-up and he healed the rift with his dad. Because of that, he then got back the relationship with his brother. His dad got to meet his children for the very first time. And for the following year, they were an extended family like never before. And then the dad died. Now imagine if he hadn't picked that phone up to have that conversation. And if he hadn't been part of the community, he probably would have convinced himself, no, it's good, it's fine, I don't need to ring him. But what would he have lost had he not done that? So that's the thing that makes me go, oh, job done. That's, you know, and somebody else will come in and go, because of this community, I've earned £100,000 this year. And I'm a bully for you, whatever. Doesn't, you know, they connect from a business perspective as well, fine. But it's those stories that you hear that it's like, well, that's why I get out of bed in the morning. That's why I do what I do.
It's interesting. Making money is really important. And if you're not making a lot of money, it means that you don't recognize its importance. But what is it, which the thing that we have to understand as human beings as we evolve is that in order to move forwards, you've got to kind of have something in your heart, because it's your heart, it's your passion, it's this calling that comes from inside, which isn't necessarily motivated by money. It's motivated by contribution. And that contribution obviously will bring money in and great satisfaction as a result of that contribution, which doesn't necessarily need to be a fiscal exchange. It's a heart exchange. Because if you're starting a membership community as you have, and people are benefiting and it's moving people's hearts, changing their relationships like the son who called his father, and, you know, otherwise he could have been living with guilt for the rest of his life. I know people who are upset that they didn't manage to say the right thing to people before they passed, you know, and that's tough, you know. And so you want to do your best to uplift another human being as best you can, because you never know when something happens. And what I do find is that when you live in the heart, you recognize that it's a different space. It's not one of dog eat dog. I need to manifest this. I need to get this in order to get this. It doesn't work like that. No. The heart is intelligent. The heart is all powerful. It's like this intuitive knowing. It knows what's right for you. It calls you to the beach on those days going, what do I need to do? You already know. You know, the heart is jump in the pool and I'm going to bang your head so you realize that you do it. And I'm like, I mean, it's funny, but it hurt at the time. Yeah. And I remember coming back to London after I'd been out here, and I'd been in Spain for looking after my dad or whatever for 6 weeks. And I come back, bang my head. I was like, everyone's like, you look really tan. What's that bang on the middle of your forehead? It's like, you look like you've got an Egyptian eye in the middle of your forehead. And I was like, don't laugh. That couldn't be closer to the truth in many ways.
Yeah.
And it made me laugh because it helped me relate to a little story Liam Gallagher said in Supersonic, the film. He goes, he got hit over the head by a hammer at school. And it sounds really horrible and nasty. He goes, but I'm really thankful for that because it made me better at music, because it made me more focused. He was 16, 17 in Manchester. And I listened to these little things and I'm thinking, well, what does that mean? It's just a course correction. You know, sometimes you need to have a little calibration if you're going off track and you're not listening to what's being told, because there is a purpose for you. There is a purpose for your life. And as you've been called to do your collaboration, as you've been called to help bring people together, I've been and compelling with your communication as well. Our paths are similar in that aspect. And I'm just fascinated because I don't make up the rules. I just have to listen to the signals my heart or your heart's telling you. And I would just be saying, if you listen to this, follow the heart. What is it telling you? Because you've got a unique destiny that only you can listen to, but you have to tune in, which means tune out the background noise.
Yeah, when you're saying about being on a course, it reminds me of the sort of analogy of on an aeroplane, when you're on automatic pilot, you're kind of coasting into a direction and the plane can go offline, you know, sort of go off course and the automatic pilot brings it back, and it can go off and the automatic pilot brings it back. And so many of us are living our lives like that. We kind of wander off course, and then there will be something, bang, drops, you know, whether it's hitting your head or whatever, something along the way drops, and then you're brought back on track. Because ultimately, if you just believe that you're put on this planet for a reason, because if we haven't got a reason, then you kind of go down a whole other path of what's the point. But if you believe that you have a reason for being here, it's them looking for the clues. You know, you have a gift that nobody else has. You have a genius that is unique to you, that you find, well, everyone could do that. That's so easy. No, it isn't. The way you do it is really special.
So how, if you were to tell someone listening right now, how do you listen? What's Gill's advice? How would you listen? How did you do it?
Well, I think it's easy when you get to a certain age, easier when you get to a certain age, because you look back and you can spot things. Like I say, that story of when I was about 4 or 5 years of age at school and having compassion or empathy for other people. So it's like, okay, so I'm compassionate. And then you look at other things, it's like, okay, I can communicate the written word very well compared to other people in my peer group. I was always the one that could write beautifully. And then you look at other things and it's like, well, if anyone's got a problem, who do they go to? Well, they always come to me for advice and support. So that's another thing. And you kind of, it's like this big tapestry, this jigsaw you're putting together. And for me, one of the pieces of the jigsaw was when the business coach said to me, why don't you become a business coach? Because I was already doing it and he spotted it. And it's like, piece of jigsaw. There we go. I help people. That's who I am. That's what I do. I help people. And then I overheard at a meeting once, if you want to know who to be connected to, Gill's the best connector. You want to talk to her, she'll connect you up with someone. And that's another piece of my jigsaw, because I thought, do I? Is that what I do? I didn't realize that. I thought everybody did that. But apparently they don't. So I would spot 2 or 3 people and go, well, you 3 are talking together, aren't you? Because obviously in your businesses, that would be amazing. They're like, no, I hadn't seen that. So all these pieces of your jigsaw kind of start coming together. And it's like, well, what am I going to do with this? Now, for me, if you talk about the big picture of Collaboration Global too much, it freaks the life out of me. It's ridiculously big. But then I take it down to day one, just a day at a time. What's my mission? It's, well, to help people and to help them to see their genius and to help them see their way. And if I can do that for one person every day, that's my job done. But what if I could do it for millions? What if the culture of love and connection and abundance was so spread, the ripples went out so far, that advertising, consumerism would have no impact on us as a vast community, because we're all just helping each other. We don't need the stuff. We don't need to strive to get a bigger house and a bigger car and fancy holidays, because we've got enough and we help each other. So you don't need to own a drill and I don't need to own a drill. We'll just share one with somebody up the road, because you only need to drill a hole once every 5 years, don't you? All those kind of things, that our world is being consumed and devoured, and we are our own worst enemy. So if you're being the best you that you can be, you want to help other people. You don't want to throw plastic away. You don't want to consume plastic. You don't want to use air miles, because you know it's polluting the environment. So you have a love of nature. You have a love of another human being, no matter who they are, whether they are tall or short or fat or thin, black or white, gay, straight, whatever. They're another human being. So you're connected to them, whether you like it or not. We are all connected at a very deep level.
Absolutely. And I was just thinking of like a universal law, that is the law of abundance is that you give that which you have. And so if you have it, you can share it. And because you will always get it back, because you're resonating at that level. So if you're feeling connected with yourself, when you give a sense of connection or an upliftment to another human being, like whether it be as simple as a compliment, you give someone a compliment, ultimately that's going out to help them, and it comes back to you like the boomerang effect. And maybe it's a little bit of money to someone on the street. Each time you go past, you give them a little blessing, bless the money, see them in their abundance. Ultimately, when you look at someone with this uplifting perspective, that little change of how you see people will, on a subatomic level, change the way that they will experience you for that moment. And so what I love about what you're doing at Collaboration Global is it is an abundant mindset, and it's an abundant heart set as well, because you're coming from the heart in order to uplift and create this positive ripple. And, you know, I think what you're doing there is absolutely great. And tell me a little bit about your podcast, because we've talked about Collaboration Global, and, you know, I'm just conscious of being able to pop this in here, because this is a great podcast you run. Gill, tell us the title again.
So it's Being Human, Hidden Depths.
Right.
What I discovered is, and again, this is one of my genius things, I can spot people's genius in them even when they don't see it for themselves. I can see it a mile off. I said, you're really good at that. And I'm like, not really. I said, you're amazing. So it just came to me that I love to discover that in people. And there are so many people in our community that think they are Joe Average, and they are not. They are extraordinary. And I'm like, please let me have a conversation with you for an hour, and I will show the world how amazing you are without you showing off at all. You can be terribly British, and it doesn't matter, but I will extricate that from you. So the whole point is for our members to be interviewed, so that I can just kind of talk about, very similar to what, you know, where did you start from? What's your purpose? Where are you going? But we come to that golden nugget where you can almost feel the audience go, oh, that's lovely, because you can see their heart. You can see and feel their passion for what they're doing, that they found their purpose and they're on this road. And we have people that are about leadership. We have people that are about kindness. We have people that understand the power of choice. And that might not be their day job, but this is what they're passionate about, and what they want to incorporate into everything that they do. And when they're that special, I'm like, wow, you have to be on the podcast. So the members get on the podcast, because they've already said to me, can I join the community? And because of that, it's like, how can I help? They are saying to me, how can I help? And they pitch in and they help the community. So I'm like, well, let me help you. Let me raise your profile and put you on the podcast. But then every so often, not that often, but every so often I come across people outside of the community. Maybe they haven't joined yet, or maybe they're about to join, or maybe they've just got so much going on in their life, it's the wrong time for them. But they have something special and they need to be interviewed as well. So I've in the likes of Simon Anholt, if people want to check that one out, TED Talk speaker. He is a global ambassador, advises on government policy, advises governments on their policy making, and he has a thing called the Good Country Index. And he wants to teach countries, and he's going around doing this at the moment, how they can not measure GDP, but measure how good their country is compared to other countries from the perspective of, would we want to go and visit them? What are they good to their own citizens? So he was an amazing podcast.
That's a fantastic, and if you want to listen to that, I'll have that in the show notes below, just so that you can listen to that episode. It's basically like saying, is if you want to come here, check out this country, because it treats its people, it treats its population, it treats its demographics in a beautiful way. And wouldn't you want to be part of that? And wouldn't you want to go and visit that place?
Exactly. And it's amazing. And I think Norway is currently #1 or something. And yeah, we're not doing too great in the UK.
So if you want some good vibes, you better go to Norway as a collective, you know.
Exactly. And I think that's the whole point, where you walk through the city and you can see there's no litter around. You know, there's a different culture that people are living into and up to be proud of their country. And of course, as going back to the podcast, is that extraordinary people, the ones I come across and I connect with from a heart space, and that's why you're going to be on one very shortly as well, James.
Oh, I'm very much looking forward to it, Gill. It's going to be absolutely brilliant. Well, Gill, it's been beautiful speaking to you today. Thank you so much. And I'll have some links about where people can find you, listen to the podcast with that Simon Anholt interview, which is astounding. If you haven't listened to it, go and check it out. But also about your membership site, the Collaboration Global. I'll have that link there. Where else can we find you?
Well, ideally, I'd like to meet people on our monthly meetings. We have Zoom meetings with people from around the globe. So if they wanted to go onto Eventbrite and search Collaboration Global, you'll find all of our meetings on there.
Okay, fab. I'll have a link for the Eventbrite there. Is there any social handles that is best for people to find you on?
Just look for me, Gill, GILLTINEY, everywhere really. Twitter, Facebook, you name it, Instagram, or Collaboration Global. If you can't find me, then you'll find Collaboration Global, and I will be there. So yeah, all the usual places.
Thank you so much, Gill. You've been our Super Soul model this week. Thank you so much for joining. And I hope you've enjoyed today's conversation with other than Gill and myself. And I hope you got some great value from it. And if you have, why not just drop us a message on Instagram, or perhaps even just post what your main takeaway was in today's episode. And I hope that there's something that potentially could change the course of your life, that maybe activate or trigger something that helps you move forward in your path. Anyway, as always, I wish you a wonderful week ahead. And remember, if you're new to the show and you haven't already, please remember to like, subscribe, share, and review. And until the next episode, thanks again for Gill for being on the show today. And as always, I wish you green lights all the way.